Okay, so welcome back, and you'll see what I'm doing is I'm continuing along here, looking at the next question that's on your review sheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a piece of thick skin, and I'm going to do that in a really simplistic manner. And what did you draw is what I'm going to ask. Did you include the basement membrane? What structures do you find inside the basement membrane in comparison and contrast to what you find for the layers of epithelia that are growing towards their death as they approach the stratum corneum there? Do all skin types actually have a subcutaneous layer? Is there a skin type that doesn't? And the answer, of course, to that is no, right? Okay. What will happen if you cut into the subcutaneous layer? Really what I'm doing here is I'm focusing on how well you've paid attention to the end of the chapter of skin when we're talking about repair, because what's different about chapter 5 that we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about with any other chapter inside A&P, with the exception of bone, is going to be how do you repair it? Because remember, one of the purposes of skin inside your body, of course, is to keep the outside outside and the inside inside. So let's draw this, okay? And remember, my cartoon of skin looks something like this. You got a rectangle sitting on top of a rectangle. And you'll notice that we get into the fact that you actually have the epidermis, you have the dermis, and you have the hypodermis here, which we also call the subcutaneous, right? And depending on thick skin or thin skin, you got the basal layer that grows up towards the corneal layer. And remember, all cells are growing this way, and we have different populations of cells inside here. Remember, earlier I told you want to make sure you know the difference between, say, a keratinocyte and, let's say, a antigen-presenting cell that might go by the name of Langerhans, okay? So this is significant material or significant differences. Down here, all sorts of stuff happens, right? Where essentially you have the papillary ridge. You'll see here that what we actually have is, let's go back. So here's the papillary ridge. I'll draw it as a sort of like layer that looks like this, right? We're increasing the surface area so you can actually hold on to the reticular portion that's made by fibroblasts that are secreting that sort of areolar connective tissue that's holding on here. That's actually how those hemidesmosomes are holding on to all of this stuff. By increasing that surface area, you're holding all of this together, right? You also have a circulatory system inside here. Remember, a moment ago I reminded you that this is diffusion. It's not only keeping all these cells alive in here, but it's keeping the epithelial cells here. But notice as they go farther and farther away, they die because it's not their purpose. What we tend to forget about when you're studying for an exam like this is what are the types of glands you find inside here, and how do they travel to the surface of the cell. Remember, a gland, of course, in this case is an exocrine type gland. It's not an endocrine type gland. Endocrine is going to diffuse into the interstitial fluid and then travel into the circulatory system, normally delivering things like hormones. This is secreting salt water with some fats to the surface of your skin to actually waterproof it or create specific types of smells for you to actually communicate with other people with. Down here, we actually will store some adipose tissue. Okay, and that adipose tissue acts as insulation, but it also acts to prevent trauma to tissue that's actually below it. So when you're actually looking at, what's going on here, we'll get back to the original question here, go all the way to the top. Where are you here? So I got rid of that picture just to make sure that you understand that when we're looking at that thick skin, you're thinking to yourself, in aggregate, it's covering the entirety of the human body, right? So let's make a quick drawing of you. And remember, you're a tube inside of a tube, but inside chapter 5, we're thinking about what happens when we're covering you. Okay? Does that make sense? At least I'm hoping it does, because you'll have some thick skin some places, some thin skin some other places. I'm trying my best to draw this thing in correct anatomical position, but, hey, I'm not exactly an artist here. Okay? Cool. Gets us to our next question. And that is, what is skin really used for? Okay, I just mentioned a moment ago, it keeps the outside world outside, it keeps the inside world inside. And what I want you to be thinking about is now, what else can it do? And you notice I'm biasing you when we think about what physiology is. And what I mean by this here is, you're a human body that runs at a specific temperature. Temp. right? So how do we actually increase temp or decrease it? ASE. Okay, and what I mean by that is, how is skin used? And skin is used to actually cool the body as best it can by using those glands. Okay, secrete sweat on top of it, use evaporation, convection to actually pull the heat away, and that's actually how you're going to regulate skin temperature. You do that by sending blood to that dermal portion. You flood the dermal portion of your skin with blood, so now the heat can move away from it. Okay, but you're sweating salts out, so it's going to come at a cost. You notice in my notes here, what I'm doing is I'm stressing a specific type of ion. In this case, it's a cation. It's a divalent cation, and that's because I also want you to pay attention to the fact that skin regulates, there we go, regulates calcium, C-I-U-M, concentration, and that's what the brackets are going to stand for, if I can find bracket on here. Bracket, calcium concentration. And there was a range for that, but don't worry about the range in this class. Just realize that we use UV radiation to convert calcitriol, I should say vitamin D, to its active form, Vit D, to active form, which is called calcitriol, calcitriol, okay, and that's going to increase calcium, calcium, absorption, right, from the digestive system. This is why in class I said you need to get 10 minutes of sunlight a day. Get outside, get inside the sun, get some sun so you can absorb more calcium. Okay, so this is the physiologic stuff that I'm talking about here. Okay, major physiologic regulation. Cool. I'm sure there's some other things we could think about here, like what else can we use skin for? I mean, it's obviously protection. It keeps the wee beasties out, stuff like that. Let's get back to the next question, though. Chapter 4, neuron. Oh, look. Let's go here. And we're going to move now to chapter 12. Okay. Before I move on to chapter 12, let's also think about how we keep the body from bleeding to death. Skin has to heal, and those types of healing come as superficial, CIL, and deep wound healing. Make sure you understand the difference between these. Okay? Superficial, we haven't gone into the dermis. Deep wound healing, we have bleeding, we have an inflammatory response, we have some granulation tissue forming, and then we actually have the return of, contact inhibition of cells that are driving up, meaning reforming tissue to heal properly. But let's get back to this piece here. What's the purpose of a neuron? I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop and I'm going to start all over again so you don't feel like you're not getting run over. I think this is an important place for us to actually start a new sort of piece of information. Okay.